Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to some and peace out to the rest of you. Already know who it is. I'm going to skip the long intro this time. Look, let me just not even take a long time to tell y'all this. I wrote about this and now I'm going to speak on it. I said before that what it comes down to is that SYSBM and IBMOR and the passport, all of this is not about teaching her a lesson. And I was reminded of this when I saw CJ_NBM's video, and I need to finish watching it, but I was reminded of that by his video. Shout out to him. We're not going to be able to teach not only the Ado sister, but the Western sister a lesson. As long as we are there and we are available, we're not going to be able to teach them anything. Now, Danyelle George said that, and I've referred to how she said that more than once. But let me also point out something else too. Even when we are gone, which is already happening, they're not going to learn their lesson. Because by the time Danyelle George said this, BGS had to tell her that it's already happening, how long it's been going on, and to what extent it's already taken place. He had to tell her this because she didn't know. And we already know that when they do find out, they have every means of externalizing it and not internalizing it. The woman that has led the world's women in putting everything on the men and making the men inadequate has now refused to accept internally that she's inadequate by her own design and choices. So the master of putting it on the man's shoulders now is refusing to accept where she has gone wrong and driven her man away. You're not going to teach her a lesson. You have to leave her. I'm not telling you to leave the race. In my last recording, I said that there are some men who have internalized the dysfunction of black people to the point that they've associated with our blackness, and therefore they do seek to use SYSBM and passports as a cover to just try to, breed out the blackness. These men do exist, but they're also pretty rare. They're not common. They exist. But this is not about that. Understand that on the flip side, there are many sisters that have done this. They've looked at what we've been through and they've associated it with our phenotype, with our blood, with our blackness itself. They're more common than brothers doing this. And consequently, if you became another race of man, you'd just be seen as not manly enough. I'm not really sure, but by the same token, the fact is that no matter how much you succeed, you are still black, and they're going to buck, and you can't. I'm not even telling you to leave the race alone. I'm telling you to leave the Western ones alone. Leave them be. There are good ones, but they need to approach you and prove to you that they're good, not as a penalty for what the bad ones have done, but rather it's just a natural consequence, that's a natural onus that's been put on them. And they still need to be your type. But I'm going to tell you how it is that you already know you can't say. Number one, the mayonnaise mafia is going through the same thing. Yes, believe me, they are. Their women are complaining about, they don't say mayonnaise men. Their women say that Western men are going to Southeast Asia to get women that are submissive and docile and also attractive, and they take issue with that. It's the same thing with them. They're big land whales, as their men call them, overweight and entitled, and they get upset when their men find love somewhere else. But when they can't find a Western Chad to settle down with them, they don't mind going to Southeast Asia themselves and marrying a Southeast Asian man half their height for a green card. And I'm not knocking the men from Southeast Asia. I'm talking about the way the women are and how they talk versus what they do. There's an inconsistency there. They done lost them. We might sit up here and say, well, Becky goes home to her man at the end of the day. Some of them have done so, but for the most part, no, it's bad for them too. Even the Becky that goes home to her man at the end of the day is going to wind up leaving that man. Because that man to whom she can go home because he's there with her committed is the one she don't want anyway. She also has the dual mating strategy. She wants to, and she doesn't just want, she insists on a right to be able to bring Chad's baby home to Poindexter for Poindexter to raise. As I said, one man's DNA and another man's resources. That's what they're looking for. So this is not unique to us in the West, number one. But also you must understand this. Getting back to us and the sisters, what I'm going to say is about them, but it's true about Western women in general. Let's simply take fit, feminine, and cooperative, and attractive. These things are not mutually exclusive to each other, but the Western woman makes them such. So if she's fit, she's not going to act feminine. If she's fit and attractive, she will not act feminine and cooperative. It doesn't matter what you bring home. She ain't gonna do it. I mean, there's a very wealthy man in the UK who had cystic fibrosis. None of his 3 kids were actually his kids. None of them. He found this out. And she insisted on not having to name the actual dad when it all came out in the open. And just like, nope, I'm not going to say who it is. That means he knew who it was. And he knew why that man should not have been able to get up in his wife's guts. And he probably would freak the uck out. And if guns were available in the UK, he'd get one and put a bullet in somebody's head. That's what that means. Somebody she wouldn't necessarily want to bring into polite society because, you know, they're classist in the UK, more so than Americans are. She wouldn't want to bring him into polite society, but she was happy romping with him in the back seat. I mean, Western women get off on this idea of cucking the provider. Like he doesn't deserve any better than that. He's wrong. And one thing that some Western women will do, the ones that like to do, they like to show illicit things, if you will. You understand? Exhibitionists. Let's just call them exhibitionists, for lack of a better term. And I don't want to turn around and trip the censors. But there are some of them that will do, you know, exhibition. In other words, they do it on camera for money. And what they will do is they will say to the husband, I'm going to do this because this makes me the breadwinner, especially in a bad economy. This makes me the breadwinner. So I'm going to do this with him, and him. The minute you step out on me, you're out. But I do it with who I want because I make the money. I kid you not. Now, most of them ain't sisters. But they're doing this. One of them I already mentioned is from South Korea. She's been living in the U.S. a long time, but she's from South Korea. And she said this when she got into that business. This is long before OnlyFans. This is long before even social media. She told this to the man with whom she works, to whom she later got married. So, in any case, let me just go ahead and get right to this. I want you to understand that one of the problems with the Western woman and the selection that they make is not only that the choices they make are immoral, which is why the so-called goody two-shoes or Poindexter or square, because see, the term square used to mean square dealing. That meant honest. That when we call someone a square now, that came from square dealing, meaning just an honest person. So understand that the choices that they're making are actually not only immoral. The choices that the Western women, including sisters, are making are anti-moral. They're not even just amoral choices. They're anti-moral. That's the reason that sisters are sitting up here saying more openly than even the mayonnaise mafiosos, that sisters are sitting up and saying, I'd rather date a drug dealer than a physician. It is not just a lack of morals in their choices. It is anti-morals. They don't choose that drug dealer because of it's not just in spite of the questionable morality of what he's doing. It is because of the immorality of selling drugs that they want him. Because let's be honest, if I slang weed, I'm not going to make as much money as an actual physician would make. Now, maybe I have less debt, depending on the schooling. Maybe. Maybe not. But if I sell weed, I'm not going to make what an actual physician is going to make in many cases. And if I did, I ain't going to be able to keep it, because when you get big, that's when the cops notice you. So what I'm saying is that even though the physician gets to make more over a lifetime and keep more of what he makes, they still don't want that. So what else is there to explain it? Well, when you come to understand that something happens in spite of all that is against it, you must then look to see what's working against it that actually becomes the reason. In other words, one of those in spite ofs actually you need to replace with because. And we can understand the morality, the immorality is one of the constants. I mean, of course, they're the physical types they have, but the immorality is one of the constants. I mean, that's why a dope boy that's short doesn't even have to be her physical type. Whereas a physician that's not her physical type still don't stand a chance because he's not her physical type. The dope boy that's not a physical type can still get up in them guts. What's the difference? And I know a lot of sisters ain't even like this, but they're silent. They're largely taken. If not, they're still hiding so well you ain't never gonna find them, so you can't count on meeting them. I wanted you gentlemen to understand, because even though I wrote this, I'm not sure that I said this in a recording and uploaded it like what I'm doing in this one for you. These spaces, IBMOR, SYSBM passports. Remember, gentlemen, this is not about saving the Western sister. She ain't gonna fix nothing. She ain't gonna change nothing. COVID ain't even gonna completely do it. They'd rather do OnlyFans than to submit to you, regardless of what you're making. They got to be really, 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 really down bad before they'll send you the "Hey, big head" text. They'll do it, but before they send you that, because they need it's because they about to be evicted. If they ain't quite to that level, they'd rather do OnlyFans and call someone else to screw them and take money for it than to actually submit to you. And the one that they're calling to do them on OnlyFans, well, as you know, he ain't even got to make what you got to make. He ain't got to be a provider. And what's the reason for that? He ain't got to do that, not only even though he's coming in with a less questionable morality and self-discipline than you, but because of his lesser morality and self-discipline than which you have. That's what I wanted you to understand, gentlemen. And this is why when people turn against morality, when they become not just immoral, but anti-moral, it's similar to Satanism. Ain't no use preaching the gospel to them or preaching revelation and salvation and redemption, which for me is Islam. Ain't no use preaching that to somebody that then sat up and said, I'm going to worship the devil. And I'm not even worshiping him even though he's a devil. I'm worshiping him because he's the devil. When someone makes that decision, you don't even need to preach to them. Most you could do is remind them, hey, look, apparently God ain't gave up on you yet because you still got time. But I wouldn't take all the time in the world for granted either. Because you're going to scream just as loud as anybody else when that fire touches you. And that's about the most you could tell them before you get on up, mosey on about your business. There ain't no saving her. And ain't no getting her right. It ain't going to happen. I guess it would be nice if it could, but even then, how could you trust them? No. What this is about is your peace of mind and the peace of mind with a good wife and the legacy that you want. And you being the boss proportional to how much you must already pay the cost anyway. It's about justice for you. That's what this is about. And you ain't gonna find it with the Western sister. Because even with the good ones who deserve a chance at this, morally speaking, you still got to go to them. You still got to sift through so much to find them. They're not coming out and saying, this is who I am. And you know what? I'm not going to run through a bunch of dingalings, but I do have my needs. And in the context of a wholesome marriage, I plan on taking care of the small head and the big head. I got it. that other head below the belt, whether it's your small or big head, the one below the belt when it sticks up. I got it. They're not coming out and saying that because they're saying, well, I'm a good woman and therefore I don't talk like, no. Actually, I think you might want to do that. And then that's one thing even they ain't going to do. They're not going to sit up here and actually compete with the bad broads for you. And I don't mean bad as in nice to look at, a bad banging body. I mean just the ones that have bad intentions. They ain't willing to compete with them for you. They'd rather sit back and watch you, not even know that this other lady that is actually talking to you and answering you and giving you choosing signals is just after the wallet or whatever else she's after. They would rather actually be quiet and let you walk into one of these broads knowing how she is than for them to sit up and say, you know what, you a good dude, I'm a good lady, let me compete with this bad broad over here. What that means is that you still ain't interesting enough even to the good ones. They exist, they may be good, they may morally deserve better than what they've seen, but even they are not willing to compete. And look, you live in a land of the free. So if they're not willing to compete, it's because you're not their type either. And it's time they get honest about it. So this ain't about saving them. I don't want any of y'all to forget that. It's not about that. I'm one of those that believes that maybe a particular battle is over, but the war is not. They're not going to stop that war. They already eliminate 80% of you. And then they get together and pressure each other to make sure that it's not each individual that just likes only 20% of who she sees, but they get together to make sure that the same 80% are excluded by every single woman and the same 20% are competed for by all these different women. They go that extra mile to make sure that 80% of men are not just unattractive to any one particular woman, but that the same 80% are they're going to be by themselves. Until, of course, she needs a stepdad. That's what separates the Wicked Witch of the West from the other ones. That's how you know it's a wrap. You're not going, she ain't gonna change. They still at war. That is a reproductive, genetic war of elimination. They are still out there to make sure that 80% of the men do not survive into the next generation genetically. And when you get down, let's say 80. Let's just say 80, okay? Then the next generation, 20, they're going to do the same thing to the next generation. If they succeed in eliminating 80%, they're going to do, now they succeed in eliminating about 50%, but if they succeed in eliminating 80%, they're still going to do the same thing in the next generation, eliminate 80%. Now, gentlemen, tell me right quick, what is 20% of 20%? 4. That means that if you give them what the F they want, only 4% of you are going to make it to your grandchildren's generation. 4. That is not okay. I can understand why it is that testosterone levels have been dropping in men. Junk size shrinking, sperm counts lowering. It's probably an adaptation to the simple fact that not only are the chemicals partially I mean, I understand some of this is the result of certain chemicals that we touch and utilize a lot and to which we're largely exposed, especially on hot days in the summer in closed cars. But this is also, I suspect that this is also in large part due to a response to the pressure from the outside environment. They're attacking manhood anyway. And you understand that they are. You don't need as much testosterone anymore. It's actually, too much of it actually would probably cause more problems for you. You're being told, stay away, stay away. Most of you are being told this, and you're being told this loudly and vociferously, even when you are providers and you're paying the cost. You're told you can never be the boss. You, the provider, are pretty much being told your job is to provide for somebody else. And that's the end of it. To provide for someone else's babies. So I could see why it's lowering. Good. I think you get the point. I've spoken long enough. It's already been 20 minutes. Thanks for listening. Black heart, black mind, black out. Assalamu alaikum. Black heterosexual, non-select male power, and black patriarchy until extinction or judgment day. And that's only going to be realized when we leave the Wicked Witch of the West, Becky, Amber, or Boom Shika and Sapphire, or anyone else in between. And don't try to make changes to the environment so that they'll change how they react, because they ain't going to do it. You just got to leave them. Thanks for listening.